أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. We continue with our discussion on the topic of Wilayah Takwiniyah and Istighatha. As promised, inshallah, we get into the definitions today, inshallah. Now, before we start defining what is Wilayah Takwiniyah, a few points which are very important when it comes to the definition of Wilayah Takwiniyah. These are points, please do keep in mind, as I keep on emphasizing now and again, that it's because of these details and not making things clear, we are then getting into confusions and disputes. Yeah. So the reason I'm mentioning all these points is to make the definition even more clearer. Okay. So, point number one. We mentioned in the previous discussion, also in the previous lecture, that some scholars would say there's one definition to Wilayah Takwiniyah, some would say there are three, some would say there are four, some would say even there are 6 to 7. Okay, some would say no, the definition is 2, 3, but there are different facets of and the different aspects of Wilayah Takwiniyah. But they're all part and parcel of the definition. As we go forward, when you will see the opinions of the scholars, then you realize that all these discussions which have been brought up are all part and parcel of the definition. Okay, it's just that because a scholar is viewing the whole issue from one angle, so he's saying, okay, there are these many definitions, but he rejects all these other definitions. But as you go forward with time, you notice that these definitions are all these different aspects and facets of Wilayah Takwiniyah are basically part and parcel of the definition. Number one. Point number two, okay, again, very important. As I mentioned that in point number one, that every scholar looks at Wilayah Takwiniyah from his perspective. And that is why you will notice that they come and define one portion of Wilayah Takwiniyah. The other scholars come and look at it from that different perspective, and they come and offer another definition to it. Okay? So the claim I'm making is this, that the whole issue of Wilayah Takwiniyah has undergone a lot of evolution. Okay, so if you go back to classical scholars, you will not even find these discussions there, yeah, in terms of Wilayah Takwiniyah and all. So this definition with time has evolved, and thus in every period, scholars have kept on adding something into the definition. Okay, and thus the definition has grown and grown and grown into 6, 7 definitions. It's because of the evolving nature of the definition with time. Okay, that is number 2. Now it brings us to a very important third point, and that's very important. If you notice now that if you have such an issue where there's so much difference of opinion even on the definition itself, leave alone the concept further to discuss the details and the proofs and all that. No, the definition itself has so much confusion and so much differing opinions. Then the question I'm posing and a person would normally pose is, can we consider Wilayah Takwiniyah to be daruriyatul madhab or no? Can we really consider something like Wilayah Takwiniyah to be part of essentials of Shia madhab? That means if you don't believe in it, you are not a Shia anymore. It seems it's impossible to come and claim that this is daruriyatul madhab when you have still not yet defined what are we still talking about. Okay, so the whole concept is not yet clear, and then we are saying that no, it's daruriyatul madhab. It's one of the essentials of Shia madhab. That means if you don't believe in it, that means if you're out of Shia madhab. Now, strangely, the scholars even go further by defining it the way they want to define it, and then consider that definition to be a daruriyatul madhab, an essential of Shia madhab. That means you will have to exclude a lot of Shia scholars outside outside Shiism then. Okay, if you go back to Sheikh Mufid and Sheikh Saduq and Sheikh Tusi and them, you will notice their understanding. As we go further, we will mention their understanding. They didn't used to believe in the definition this current scholar is defining as. Okay, then how come those scholars, are you going to remove them from Shiism or not? Okay, so what I'm claiming is this, that, and it's not my claim, it's a scholarly academic claim which scholars, and I'll quote a statement from one of the scholars, is a lot of times scholars do make claims, and because they're humans, okay, they'd end up making mistakes. Sometimes their claims cannot be verified. So when a scholar comes and claims that this is a daruriyatul madhab, it's an essential part of Shia madhab, when you go back, you will not be able to verify that statement. Now, how much does it happen? How much does it happen? You can end up giving so many examples of scholars end up claiming something, and then the opposite can be verified. I hope you're getting me, okay? This is no disrespect to scholars. These are humans, they are fallibles, they end up making claims which cannot be verified. Okay? Let's not put them at a pedestal of a ma'soom and an infallible and say they cannot also make mistakes. Okay? How many a times? So let me give you one example, a statement from a scholar and a researcher, which shows you that how scholars end up making claims which sometimes the opposite is the true also. So for those of you who follow up on the Dars Kharij of the scholars, you end up seeing this now and again. I'm quoting this one statement from Allama Jawad Mughniya, the famous Lebanese scholar. He has a small booklet with the name of Ma Ulama in Najaf al-Ashraf. On page number 73, he makes this statement. Please, let's go with this statement, okay? He says, لم أرى شيئا كثر مدعوه والمتشبئون به مثل الإجماع. Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Okay? He says, I've not seen anything with more claimants and those who pretend to claim it more than the topic and the concept of consensus and ijma'. Okay, so you will notice that scholars end up claiming ijma' for a lot of things and claiming consensus for a lot of things, and that's exactly what he's discussing. He's saying scholars end up claiming that, oh, there's ijma' for this. Sometimes they pretend to claim that, oh, there's an ijma' for this. Okay, then he goes on further by saying حتى أصبح التمسك به فوضى أو شبيهها بالفوضى. What has happened is now that such claims has reached to a level now that anybody who wants to rely on consensus has become chaotic now, okay? It's gotten to a point that relying on consensus and ijma has become near to chaotic or chaotic itself. It's become a chaos, a fawda, okay? Why? Because everyone is claiming a consensus and that's the evidence. Okay, so now notice he goes further. He says that فَكُلُّ مَنْ أَعْوَزَهُ الدَّلِيلِ يَلْتَجِعْ إِلَى الْإِجْمَاعِ. Okay, so this is a very important statement, and this is exactly the thing which I'm talking about. That sometimes scholars claim something, and then this is exactly, it turns out that it can't be verified. Okay, so when a scholar lacks evidence, this is what Allama Jawad Mughniya is saying, that whenever a scholar lacks evidence, he quickly turns towards consensus and ijma'. And how many examples can you give? Huh? How many examples can you end up giving? That a lot of times scholars refer to issues which then you end up referring and say, okay, where is your proof? Ijma'. And then you come and check out, where is this ijma' coming from? It's not verifiable ijma', okay? Rather, this statement is very important to keep in mind. Rather, sometimes this is where it hurts, that when scholars end up making such categorical statements which then end up affecting the followers then. He says, look at this statement. بَلْ قَدْ يُفْتِ فَقِيهٌ بِشَيْءٍ وَيَسْتَدِلُّ بِالْإِجْمَاعِ. ثم يعدل ويفتي بضده ويستدل بالإجماع. Ya Allah, Ya Allah. So it such happens at times that a faqih and a scholar, okay, we are not talking of lay people, we are talking of mujtahideen and the scholars. A scholar gives up a fatwa on one issue. When asked for evidence, he says, my evidence is ijma and consensus. And then later he turns away from that opinion of his and then proves and gives an opposite opinion to the initial opinion of his. And how many times it happens, yeah? This is one of the things which, again, might be a topic by itself that, again, I'm sorry, I'm opening up a lot of brackets and parentheses. This is a topic by itself that scholars keep on getting into it, that anybody who mentions his opinion has to be sure that this is his opinion. Otherwise, he's going to misguide to the level that we're being told that if you end up mentioning an opinion and then later you realize that it's wrong, you have to make people come out of the qabr and the grave to be able to tell them, everybody, oh, I made a mistake in my opinion and now this is my other opinion. Okay? Scholars do make difference. These scholars change their opinions. So now what? Scholars should also take our people from the graves and say, okay, come, this is my different opinion. And inshallah, this will be a topic, one of the topics which we will be taking up in the future, inshallah, because this is one of the very important discussions which are being discussed for those, anybody who offers a different opinion. A quick label is put that, oh, you're misguiding. And then what are you being told? That if you misguide and you change your opinion, that means you have to bring everybody back from the grave. No. Okay? Scholars do change their opinions also. And we can give plenty of examples, inshallah, in the future. But the point Allama Jawad Mughniya is making in regards to consensus, a scholar gives an opinion, refers to ijma as his proof. And then he gives a differing opinion, rather the opposite opinion to what he actually gave as a first opinion. When you ask him for his proof, وَيَسْتَدِلُّ بِالْإِجْمَاعِ, again he refers to ijma as his and consensus as his proof. This is how much misused ijma is, and that's why some scholars are really not inclined to using ijma as a proof, because the way it's being misused. So now he gives an example. So look at this example. He gives this example from Sheikh Yusuf al-Bahrani's book Durar al-Najafiyya, page number 283. He's the author of Hada'iq, yeah, the famous Hada'iq al-Nadhira, Sheikh Yusuf al-Bahrani, the Akhbari and the Muhaddith, yeah. He says, he gives this example. Notice now, a scholar, he says one of his contemporaries, meaning a scholar, a contemporary to Sheikh Yusuf al-Bahrani, gives a religious fatwa. Notice now, a fatwa he gives on what? He says the fatwa he gave was that he prohibited any food and any drink in which a drop of human sweat, okay? So human sweat or a tear or some saliva or some mucus had fallen. This scholar came and said that if there is any food or drink in which there's a tear, there's a human tear, or there's human sweat or saliva or mucus, it's prohibited to consume that food or drink. Prohibited, haram. What was his proof? La ilaha illallah. Okay? His proof is consensus of the scholars. So, Allama Jawad Mughniya, quoting Sheikh Yusuf al-Bahrani, says that we all know that this consensus doesn't exist. Rather, he says, وَإِنَّهُ لَا شَكَّ فِي عَدَمِ التَّحْرِيمِ. But we are all sure that there's no such prohibition existing at all. So there's no prohibition at all like this in Shia fiqh. But the scholar comes and claims what? He comes and claims ijma for it. He comes and claims ijma for this concept. Do you get me? Okay? So the point I was trying to make, I'm sorry, I get into tangents a lot, but I'm forced to get into these discussions to be able to prove all these issues. So The point I was trying to make is a lot of times scholars can come and claim something to be a necessity of Shia madhab, and then when you go check and verify the claim, you cannot verify that claim anymore. And the example I gave is one example of ijma only, okay? And plenty of examples can be given. This was point number 3. Point number 4, this is again very important when coming to defining the term and the terminology, Wilayah Takwiniyah. We mentioned in the previous lecture also that the word used in the riwayat is not Wilayah Takwiniyah. Wilayah Takwiniyah is a very recent terminology. Okay, now how recent, the scholars have not mentioned it very clearly, but it doesn't seem to be going 200 years back or something. Okay, if you go back to the Akhbari scholars like Allama Majlisi, you will not find these terminologies being used by them. The terminology used in hadith, as I mentioned, is the word tafweed. Tafweed means to delegate. Okay, it's to delegate, and that's why I mentioned the likes of Allama Majlisi use the word tafweed. Rather, even Imam Khomeini, who we will quote inshallah, he also uses the riwayats of tafweed also to discuss Wilayah Takwiniyah. Okay, so the word used in the riwayats is tafweed. Now the question comes in then, why the scholars have changed this terminology to Wilayah Takwiniyah? My assumption is perhaps it's because of the negative connotation to the word tafweed and the terminology tafweed. Okay, tafweed has a very negative terminology, okay, and negative connotation to it. So for example, if you notice the earlier classical scholars, the likes of Sheikh Saduq and Sheikh Mufid and them, they would discuss a subgroup and a group called Mufawwidha. Okay, Mufawwidha comes from the word tafweed. Now, Sheikh Mufid considers Mufawwidha to be part of the Ghalis. It's a subgroup of the Ghalis, and thus it's kafir. These are misguided. Sheikh Saduq doesn't do that. Sheikh Saduq doesn't consider them to be subgroup of the Ghalis, but still he compares them to the Ghalis. He basically puts these two groups together in one lane and considers both of them as kafirs and misguided. Okay, so I feel the reason this terminology is not being used, it's because of the negative connotation it comes with it, and that's why scholars are avoiding to use it, and that's now they have turned to Wilayah Takwiniyah. But tafweed gives a proper meaning of the understanding of the term Wilayah Takwiniyah. Okay, the reason is because we are having confusions today is because this term now has been changed to another term, and now this term is being played around with. But if you come to this term, the meaning becomes very clear. Do you get me? Okay, these were the 4 points I'd wanted to make in regards to the definitions. Okay, now we come to the definition of Wilayah Takwiniyah. We start, inshallah. Let's see however much we can define, and then inshallah we go into subsequent discussions and define more definitions, inshallah. Okay, now as we mentioned that some have said 3 definitions, some have said 4 definitions, some have said different aspects and different facets, whatever we want to come up with. What I'll do is I'll combine all these opinions into different definitions of Wilayah Takwiniyah. So the first definition, and this opinion will come in subsequent discussions when we discuss the opinions of the scholars. So the first definition of Wilayah Takwiniyah is this. The scholars say Wilayah Takwiniyah means this, that an imam again, keep on keeping in mind, okay, imam means a prophet and the imam. An imam or a wali does dua, and because the riwayats mention that they are mustajabud da'wah, they do dua and the dua is accepted. Okay, rather some of the riwayats even go further, they wish something and their wish is accepted. Okay, so because they do a dua and the dua is immediately accepted, the scholars have said this is the meaning of Wilayah Takwiniyah. Okay? As we go further, one of the meanings you will notice, the likes of Allama Majlisi will come to it, inshallah, his opinion. They said this, that what? That a wali or an imam does a dua and his dua is immediately accepted. Thus this becomes the meaning of Wilayah Takwiniyah. Okay? Now, can this really be? Now, inshallah, as we go further, we will keep on discussing the details and the proofs and all whatnot. At the moment, I just want you to keep this discussion in mind. That can this be considered to be Wilayah Takwiniyah? Wilayah Takwiniyah doesn't give the meaning. Again, the meaning tafweed gives the meaning better. Okay? Tafweed, we say it means what? Tafweed means to delegate authority. You are delegating authority. So let me give you an example which I'll keep on using throughout the process. Okay? So take an example of a company. Okay? A company has an owner and a director, and then has a manager or a CEO, whatever you want to call it, the different terminology is being used. Okay? And then you have the different employees. Okay? Now, the owner has every authority in the company to do anything with the company. So he's the owner and the director. The discussion will come is on the manager and the CEO here. Okay? Here is where we are discussing this Wilayah Takwiniyah and the delegation of authority. Now, when it comes to this issue, okay, when we say that they do dua and the du'as are straight away immediately accepted, can we call it as Wilayah Takwiniyah and delegation of authority or no? So what happens now is here. The owner keeps the authority. The authority is with him. The CEO and the manager has no authority. All what he can do is, whenever there's any decision to be made, he comes back to the owner and tells the owner, can you please do this? This is what needs to be done. Because the owner and the director respects the manager so much, he doesn't reject his opinion, but the authority lies with who? The authority lies with the owner and the director. He has not delegated authority to the manager and the CEO. Are you getting me? Okay? And thus some scholars like Sheikh Hussein al-Khashin, he says this cannot be considered to be Wilayah Takwiniyah or Tafweed, because there's no delegation of authority. I hope you're getting me. Okay? This is one issue which you need to keep in mind when it comes to this opinion and this definition. The second issue, keeping in mind with this opinion and this definition, now this is a discussion. As I said, we will come and quote the references and the dalil and the hadith later. So we have two sets of contradictory narrations when it comes to the du'as and the state of the imam when it comes to the du'as of theirs. So one hadith says that an imam being the prophet and the imam, okay? The imam, when he prays to Allah, his dua is immediately accepted. But we have a set of contradictory narrations, okay, which we will, inshallah, Shaykh Saduq has quoted it in their books, in his books also. We will come and quote them and show you that no, there's some riwayats which say no, when they did dua, their duas were not accepted. Okay, their duas were not accepted. Okay, so now what do we do with this whole issue? Rather, you come to the Quran also. In Surah Tawbah, keep in mind, this surah is one of the last surahs to be revealed to the Prophet, okay? And thus it's discussing about those munafiqeen who have crossed all the red lines. These hypocrites now have crossed all the red lines. They cannot be forgiven anymore, okay? And that is why in verse number 80, Allah then turns and the addressee is the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No one have I seen from the Mufassirin say that, oh, the addressee are the Muslims. No, the addressee of this verse is the Holy Prophet himself. The verse says, Istaghfir lahum, aw la tastaghfir lahum. Okay, oh Prophet, if you do ask forgiveness for these hypocrites, or you don't even ask for them, it doesn't make a difference. We are not going to forgive them. Do you get me? Okay, the Holy Prophet is being addressed in this verse. Rather it goes in tastaghfir lahum sab'ina marra. O Prophet, if you ask forgiveness for them 70 times, فَلَنْ يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ. Allah is not going to forgive them. لَنْ يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ. Lan means abadan. Okay, one of the famous meanings of lan is forever. Allah is not going to forgive these people. Why? ذلك بأنهم كفروا بالله ورسوله والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. These people have reached a level of kufr. Now there is no return now for them, and thus they've reached a level of fisq and evil and wrongdoing that now there's no return for these people. When you reach to a level, such a level, a prophet's dua also doesn't help you. Okay, now a discussion would come under this verse is here, that some would say this verse is talking and addressing to the Prophet. That means the dua of the Prophet for some individuals are not going to be accepted. That means some of the places where the dua of the Prophet cannot be accepted. Okay? Some would say, no, this verse is not talking about that. Now, the verse is not talking about that. The verse is talking about emphasizing and doing ta'keed on the whole issue of adhab. It's not talking about the dua of the Prophet. That's not the topic of this verse. Okay? The verse is not talking that whether the Prophet's dua is accepted or not in regards to the hypocrites. No. The verse is saying no. It's emphasizing on the adhab. Okay? Because in the previous verse, Allah says, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ alim. Okay, we will give them the utmost, the worst punishment. Okay, and then the Prophet is being told, istaghfir lahum. Now, if you ask for forgiveness for them, we're not going to accept it from you. No, that's not the discussion. The discussion is that no, we are emphasizing on the adhab. Now, when you go to the riwayats, you get a different picture altogether. It's a very interesting discussion of how scholars literally understand the Quran. Okay, this verse, this word in this verse, it says, if you ask forgiveness for them 70 times. Some scholars have said the Holy Prophet said, no, but I will ask for them 100 times. When Allah says, فَلَنْ يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ, He is not going to forgive them forever. The Prophet doesn't understand that, apparently, God forbid. Okay, he is like, no, I'm going to ask for forgiveness for 100 times and God will forgive. Okay, these are the discussions in the riwayats. So riwayats show you the discussion is on the dua of the Prophet. Okay, as much as some scholars have tried to say that this topic, this verse is not talking about the dua of the Prophet, rather it's talking about the what? It's talking about the adhab and the punishment which the hypocrites will go through. Okay, so this was definition number 1. Definition number 1, we said, is what? That we said that when they do dua, okay, when they do dua, their dua is immediately accepted, and then we discuss some of the points related to it. Okay. Definition number 2. So I'm quoting from this book. This is a book on Wilayah Takwiniyah wa Mas'aleh Khalq Rizq. Can you notice how he's dividing? Okay, Wilayah Takwiniyah in regards to the issue of rizq and khalq. Okay, shows you a different definition. So now on page number, so he offers 3 definitions. Okay, and I'll go through the three definitions inshallah. On page 17, he offers the first definition. So notice what he says. He says, Wilayah Ahl Bayt alayhimus salam bar makhluqat bima'naya awwal. Okay, so ours is the second definition, his is the first definition. He's saying that the first definition in regards to the wilayah of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, yani itaat wa farman bardari hame ashya wa kainat as a'imma alayhimus salam. I'm repeating the word hame ashya. This is a very important point to keep in mind, okay? And this is one of the biggest issues where the confusion is happening. Notice, the definition is this, okay? Wilayah Takwiniyah means that the whole universe, hamaya ashya, everything in the universe, including the angels also, including the metaphysical world, are all submissive to the commands of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and to the commands of the Imam. Imam meaning the Holy Prophet and the Imam, okay? Everything. Not some things. Now, the reason I'm emphasizing on this is because later when we come and discuss mu'jiza and kiramat, one of the definitions of Wilayah Takwiniyah is involving mu'jizat, the miracles and the kiramat and the supernatural actions, okay? That is not included in this definition. Please keep a separate, make a distinction between these two. And the reason I'm saying is this, because mu'jiza, a miracle, is a temporary supernatural act. It's not an act which is eternal. What they are saying in the second definition is this, that the Imam has authority over everything. That means everything is submissive to Imam at every time, from the beginning of creation to the end of the creation. Mu'jiza is not like that. A miracle is not like that. A miracle is a temporary action from, now we'll come and discuss from Allah, from the Prophet, something we'll come and discuss it later. But it's a temporary act, so it's related to time and space. Okay? And it's something on one or two issues. It's not for everything. What this opinion is saying, that the Prophet, when the Imam wills anything, okay? The moment the Imam wills anything, and that has to happen because everything has been put under the control of the Imam. The Imam is basically delegated the authority. The authority is delegated to him. He controls everything. Okay? And thus everyone has to obey him. So he says something and something has to happen. So start from the non-living entities, the stones and the mountains or whatever you want to think of. Come to the plants, come to the animals, come to the humans, and come to the angels. All of these are under the command of the Imam. And they're submissive to the Imam. Okay? So the Imam wills it and they have to do it. Now, as we go further, we will see that they have a caveat to that. Okay? Now, I will come and quote you a statement also. He says, the author says that we have a hadith for this. And this, by the way, this is the popular opinion being followed today. Okay? So whenever scholars are discussing, today's scholars, the contemporary, I will come and show you some scholars don't agree with this. But when you come to mystical scholars, okay, the likes of Imam Khomeini and them, they understand this meaning. This is trying to be promoted as the popular opinion out there, okay? So he says, the author says that we have 5 riwayats in Usulul Kafi proving this concept. We will read one riwayah and you'll see what kind of riwayah is it. There are 9 riwayats in Basa'ir al-Darajat of As-Saffar. These are the 2 earlier classical hadith books are mentioned. So how many are there? 9 plus 5 with 14 riwayats. Now, this is where you come and say that how riwayats are added in the later period. In Tafsir Nur al-Thaqalain and Tafsir al-Burhan, these are two 10th and 11th century hadith books. They have 20 narrations. Okay, so 6 additional narrations to the earlier narrations. Strangely, when you come to Biharul Anwar, a scholar in the 11th, 12th century, Allama Majlisi, he comes and quotes 60 such narrations. That means almost 44 extra narrations. Where does he come from? 46 extra narrations. Where does he bring all these extra narrations from? This is a question mark. Okay? And that is why, though Allama Majlisi himself denies this concept of Wilayah Takwiniyah with this meaning, but you come and question now, then you come and say that, okay, it was a time when the Safavids came and really promoted this concept a lot. Okay, this is something, inshallah, we might discuss it again as we go further, inshallah. Okay, so now, this same concept and this definition has been shared by Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi in his book, Shiism, Imamate and Wilayah. This is on page number 87. Okay, notice the definition he's proposing. It's the same second definition we are discussing. He says it's a vicegerency, that means it's a wilayah, pertaining to the whole of creation. Do you get the point? Okay, it's not partial creation, it's not portion of the creation. No, it's the whole creation involved. So it's a vicegerency pertaining to the whole of creation, by virtue of which all the atoms in the universe humble themselves before the holder of authority. Everything in the universe basically humbles itself. It's submissive. That means the Imam says something and it has to happen. That has to follow. Because it's submissive. It's under the control of the Imam himself. Are you getting me? Okay? So, all the atoms in the universe humble themselves before the holder of the authority. This is a very important point again to keep in mind. Tafweed. Okay? The authority is delegated to the Imam. He holds the authority. So the example we gave of the company and the manager. Okay? So in the first example we said that no, the authority remains with the owner. The manager is just a person who takes the messages and the authority and everything is implemented by the owner. Here it's not like that. Here it's like this. The owner is there. He delegates all the authority. Okay? He delegates authority to the manager. That means the manager, whenever he wishes to do whatever, he can do it. Okay? This is the meaning of Wilayah Takwiniyah in this definition. That means everything in the company is submissive to the manager, the way it's submissive to the owner. So they have to do everything, whatever the manager and the CEO says. Okay, now there's a caveat they end up putting is this, that the manager will never do something opposite to the wish of the owner. That's the only caveat they add. Otherwise, the manager can do everything. And this is where the whole problem comes in. Okay, where does Allah go then? Okay, now notice what Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi then goes and says, this is one of the essential beliefs of our Shia school. This is where I say that this is not a verifiable statement. You come and really question Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi, say, where do you get this statement from? He might say, oh no, I'm referring it to a scholar. Now he's referred the name of the scholar, I'm not referring the name of it. But if you ask them that verify this statement and show us in the statements of the earlier classical scholars, they will not be able to verify this. Okay? So, finally, I would just like to give an example, one riwayah from Usul al-Kafi, which Imam Khomeini uses it in his Chihal Hadith, in his 40 Hadith. So now I'm referring to the Farsi version, page number 551. This book has been published in English also, so you can refer to it in English also. He discusses this whole issue, okay, of the kiramat and the maqamat and the stations of the Imams alayhimus salam. So notice the riwayah he quotes to prove the definition he's trying to prove. Okay? So there's a discussion he's somehow quoting Allama Majlisi, and he refutes Allama Majlisi's opinion, which will come and mention later. He proposes no, Imams have this authority that everything in the universe is submissive to the Imam. Now, look at the riwayah. The riwayah is from Muhammad ibn Sinan. Muhammad ibn Sinan in the classical Rijali books, he's a ghali, okay? He's a questionable and a dubious narrator. Okay, do you get me? Okay, and I'm purposely mentioning this for this reason, that for those people, you see, one of the problems we are facing is this, that riwayats which are in favor of our beliefs, we end up justifying it, and then we will do everything to justify that narrator is either thiqa and trustworthy, or we'll come and say, no, we don't believe in chain of narrators. But when a hadith comes out which is contrary to our beliefs, then suddenly we start going into the chains and we say, oh, the chain is weak. This is a weak narration. But let's have one standard when we come and discuss, okay? So either we discuss the chains the way Sayyid Khouy does it. Ayatollah Khouy was really focusing on a lot of chains. Yes, some places has gone in the text, but his main focus was the chains. Majority of the Shia scholars deny that. They say, no, we'll not accept this chain of narrators criticism. We'll go into the text. Beautiful. Let's go into the text then. Okay? So one of the discussions we will then end up coming up and discussing is the criteria of judging the hadith with the Quran. Is this criteria even there or not? This is something we will discuss it. Okay? So, look at the hadith. The riwayah is from Muhammad ibn Sinan. He says, I was in the presence of the 9th Imam alayhi salam. He says, فَأَجْرَيْتُ اخْتِلَافَ الشِّيعَةِ. It shows that, he says, I mentioned the differences within the Shias, and there were disputes and differences within the Shia. At the time of the 9th Imam, it still shows that Shias were still having issues with this issue. I hope you're getting me, okay? And this is where we come and say, how do you end up saying that this is one of the daruriyat of deen when the Shias at the time of the Imam themselves were having differences of opinion? At the time of 9th Imam, it's not earlier Imams, the later Imams, still ikhtilaf is there. Okay? So, now the riwayah doesn't mention what ikhtilaf and what differences were there, but then suddenly the Imam turns back to Muhammad ibn Sinan. He says, Inna Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala lam yazil mutafarridan bi wahdaniyati. Allah was always alone and alone. He is all one and one alone. Okay? And then this is the portion now. ثم خلق محمدا صلى الله عليه وآله وعليا وفاطمة عليهم السلام فمكثوا ألف دهر. Okay? When Allah was alone, then He ended up creating the Holy Prophet. He created Imam Ali and Bibi Fatima alayhim salam. These three individuals are mentioned. These three personalities are mentioned. فَمَكَثُوا أَلْفَ دَهْرٍ. Then there was a portion. So the riwayah says, they stayed alone in that period, these three personalities, for أَلْفَ دَهْرٍ. Now somebody wants to take it literally, say 1,000 years, 1,000 periods, whatever the period, okay? You say some time of the period, these three remained alone. Okay? They were the only ones who were there in this universe. After that, ثُمَّ خَلَقَ جَمِيعَ الْأَشْيَاءِ فَأَشْهَدَهُمْ خَلْقَهَا. Okay? After that, Allah then created everything in the universe. So that's including the angels now also, okay? He created everything after a portion and a period which passed, which Allah was there and these three individuals. After a period, Allah creates everything. What he did was that he made these three personalities witness the whole creation of everything. I hope you're getting me where it's going to, okay? Everything which was being created, these three were witnesses to it. Then, this is the portion now Imam Khomeini is also using. وَأَجْرَى طَاعَتَهُمْ عَلَيْهَا وَفَوَّضَ. The word tafweed is being used. Can you see that, okay? وَفَوَّضَ أُمُورَهَا إِلَيْهِمْ. And then he made their obedience compulsory on them. وَأَجْرَى طَاعَتَهُمْ عَلَيْهَا. So everything now was supposed to obey and be submissive to these three. وَفَوَّضَ أُمُورَهَا إِلَيْهِمْ. And all the affairs were delegated to them. Do you get me, okay? This is the definition of Wilayah Takwiniyah. The umur and the affairs of every creation was actually delegated to them. And this is what Imam Khomeini believes in it. Okay, nobody should come and say this is not a tafweed we accept. No, Imam Khomeini accepts it and he quotes it as a proof. Okay, this is the tafweed they believe in. This is the meaning of Wilayah Takwiniyah which is being promoted today. Okay, now the verse goes on, the riwayah goes on further, and this is where now you come and see that Aghali, the ghulu plays its role now. Okay, فَهُمْ يَحِلُّونَ مَا يَشَاءُونَ وَيُحَرِّمُونَ مَا يَشَاءُونَ. Now keep in mind that discussion we had in the previous lecture of Wilayah Tashri'iyah. As I said, these discussions are so interconnected, okay? After giving every authority and giving them the authority and delegating authority to them, okay? فَهُمْ يَحِلُّونَ مَا يَشَاءُونَ, okay? وَيُحَرِّمُونَ مَا يَشَاءُونَ. Now, Allama Majlisi would have a different understanding to this hadith. Inshallah, if we get later, we can discuss about it. They will now make everything they wish to be lawful. Whatever they wish to make it lawful, they'll make it lawful. And whatever they wish not to make it unlawful, they can prohibit it. They can prohibit that issue. Okay? So they make halal halal and they make the haram haram. It's them who are making it. Why? Because Allah has given them the authority. Now some would discuss this under Wilayah Tashri'iyah. As I said that Allama Majlisi has a difference of opinion here. Okay? Imam Khomeini uses it under this Wilayah Takwiniyah, not Wilayah Tashri'iyah. Okay? So this is the hadith. Do you get me? Okay? The crux of the hadith is this, that Allah created them. These three personalities were given and delegated the authority. Now they make halal halal and make haram haram. Okay? And then Imam goes on further. He says, Ya Muhammad ibn Sinan, okay? هذه الديانة. This is the religiosity I expect from you. So if you go ahead of it, you are destroyed. Okay? من تقدمها مرق ومن تخلف عنها محق وَمَنْ لَزِمَهَا لَحِقْ. This is the religiosity which we want from you. Now, probably this is where some scholars are coming up and making it as one of the daruriyat and necessities of Shia madhab. Imam is saying this is the religiosity we want from you. So if you don't accept what we have mentioned in this riwayah, then you are not a Shia anymore. Okay? How many Shias will we need to take out from this? Okay? خُذْهَا إِلَيْكَ يَا Muhammad. This is the religiosity you should be taking. Okay? So, in conclusion, again, time is really going with us. So we discussed a few points which were necessary, where we said that these are necessary, important points to keep in mind in regards to the definition of Wilayah Takwiniyah. And then we ended up having two definitions. We have discussed two definitions today. Okay? We said one definition is where the Imam does dua and his dua is immediately answered. We discussed issues related to that. The second issue we discussed is the Wilayah of submissiveness, okay, and ita'a. Everything in the universe, again I'm repeating, everything, not portion of it. And thus you separate the discussion from mu'jizat and the miracles and all kiramat, okay? You don't mix these two discussions together, okay? Everything in the universe is submissive to the Imam. The Imam wills it and they have to obey it, okay? This is the meaning, the second definition of Wilayah Takwiniyah. Inshallah, in subsequent discussions, in the next discussion we end up discussing the other definitions, inshallah. Let's pray to Allah to give us the tawfiq to be able to understand our religion the way it needs to be understood, the way Allah wants us to understand our religion. And let's pray for what's happening again in the world. These strange dominating powers and colonialist powers, if I want to call it that way, they will not sit and allow this world to stay in peace, okay, and tranquility. They just want wars and wars and wars. Let's pray to Allah that eventual peace should inshallah come. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.